No microphone, so it's that.
Project.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's West Clermont School Board meeting. Mr. Romano, will you please call us to order?
Mrs. Brinkman.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff.
Present.
Mrs. Delaney.
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
All present.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of, or investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, and ask for a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney, any discussion needed?
Mr. Chumley did. Mr. Chumley.
They kind of did at the same time.
Oh,
You
same
said
time as
Delaney.
Delaney,
so-
all right. Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mr. Schaff.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay. We will be going into executive session and rejoining the public session at 7 p.m. Mr. Romano, will you please withdraw us from executive session?
Mrs. Brinkman,
Present?
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
5 present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any cards this evening? Where's Chuck? No cards.
You do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Personnel.
We didn't adopt the agenda.
Oh, you're right.
4.0.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
What are you guys going to do without me?
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
It's more that consent agenda. All right, we've been given the agenda well in advance of the meeting, and we've had ample opportunity to discuss it with both Mrs. Adams and Mr. Romano. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt it as presented and ask for a second.
Second.
Discussion from anyone? Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
Now we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I was going to say, all right. Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for November 18th, 2021. On the agenda today, we have the resignation of 2 teachers and 2 custodians. We have also have the proposed hiring of a second grade teacher at Merwin. This is a result of the higher than expected enrollment in that grade level. We're also adding a part-time paraprofessional aide at Holly Hills preschool classroom to help that support. Included on this agenda is the proposed salary adjustment for Jason Myers, who is moving from our skilled maintenance position to our business coordinator position, and I think he's here today in the back there. Great. Salary adjustment for 11 cafe workers, and this adjustment goes, there are multiple unfilled vacancies, and so these ladies have been working that time anyway, so we're making it official and then collapsing those vacancies. Also on the agenda is the requested we also have a proposed hiring of our wrestling and baseball coaches for the upcoming seasons. We also have request unpaid leave of absences and the hiring of substitute for the health clinic assistant and multiple volunteers and student teachers. So finally, we have the proposed stipend approval list for our family and community engagement design teamwork and mentor teachers that have been working with our student teachers from Northern Kentucky University. So this concludes the review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration. Thank you.
So continuing on, item 6.02 is the approval of the minutes. Those were the minutes for the October 25th, 2021 regular board meeting. So it would be a recommendation to approve those minutes. Item 6.03 are donations received. Recommendation would be to approve the following donations. First one was to West Clermont High School Athletics. They received lifting equipment from the Cincinnati Bengals. And 2, West Clermont High School Athletics received a $50 donation from Janet and Ken Stewart in memory of Elaine Tipton. Item 6.04 are contracts to be approved by the board. There's one contract. It's a recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing the superintendent treasurer to execute agreements for, this is a contract with Power School for Enrollment Express. It's a $65,000 contract over a 2-year period. Item 6.05 is the financial statements, bill paid, list of investments for the school district. Make a quick note on the financial statement. What we do provide is monthly a comparison to the 5-year forecast. This current 5-year forecast that has been adopted is the one that goes back to May. So that's the current one that we do this comparison to. Later on this evening, we'll adopt the 5-year forecast, or I'll have a request to adopt the 5-year forecast, and we'll replace that monthly financial statement or that column in there with the new one. But for the current month, we did receive in revenue to the general fund $5.2 million. That primarily was the revenue from the state. As you'll note, most of the tax collection really occurs with the August settlement. So really the major revenue coming in is our funding from the state right now. On the expense side, we spent $7.1 million. A majority of that is, as always, personnel and fringe benefit services. They are on track. If we look through October being the fourth month out of the year, about 33% underway. Our salaries and benefits kind of follow that pattern of 1/12 every month, and we are at the 32% mark, so we're just shy of what we anticipated for that to be done. And we're on track with every other item for that. So the recommendation under 6.05 would be to approve financial statements, bill paid, and list of investments for the school district. So the consent agenda was for item 6.01 through item 6.05.
You've heard the recommendation of the items presented in the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second?
Second?
Mrs. Delaney, discussion? Thank you for the report on the finances. That was really good. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Superintendent's business.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me? Mr. Reese is coaching me up. Make sure I talk loud enough here. Item 7.01 is I gotta take my glasses off. A resolution to show support of military families and children. And I think November is a great month to bring this resolution forward, as it is Veterans Day month. Or Veterans Day happened in November, obviously, and many of our buildings had wonderful Veterans Day celebrations in many different ways, especially during COVID. And what the resolution is about tonight is that we share. So let me start. I think it's a great opportunity for us to pause and honor military veterans and families before we use a resolution to show support for our military families, especially those families with students at West Clermont. So I pulled the latest report today, or asked for the latest report. We have 73 students in our district that, when they register, updated the registration that someone in their family is active military. So that's a good number for us to always, that's 1% of our population, essentially. In the resolution, we share many of the great things that our schools do to honor our military veterans, including Veterans Day programming, the Willowville Memorial Day Parade, recognition at awards nights, especially at the high school and the senior awards, and then at our graduation. And there's many more things that happen throughout the year. I would also say that we have a strong relationship with our recruiters. Mrs. Mihas at the high school has really built that relationship, that the recruiters feel welcome when they come to our schools. The resolution also speaks about the unique challenges that our military families have. And actually, we're in our board updates, there's some specific language that we added to ensure that military families feel welcome in the district when they're enrolling, and all the unique things happen when someone is deployed or someone is moving in from another part of the country. So also in this resolution, we're asking for support for 5 of our schools to apply for the Ohio Department of Education Purple Star Award. The 5 buildings currently would be West Clermont High School, West Clermont Middle School, Amelia Elementary, Willowville, and Merle. And the Purple Star Award is for military-friendly schools that show a major commitment to the students and families connected to our nation's military. The schools that earn the award will receive a special Purple Star recognition to display on site. The current round is due December 15th. So part of our application process is to bring a resolution forward that our buildings can share with that support. So the superintendent respectfully requests the approval of the resolution as presented.
You've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Schaff, discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
5 yes.
Thank you for,
7.02 is the second reading of our general policy review that started last month in October. In such areas such as teaching and learning, clubs and extracurriculars, human resources, and some specifics on if the district would like to commemorate a building, a facility, or part of our grounds. So this is the second reading. So the superintendent respectfully requests the approval of proposed updates to the West Clermont Board of Education policy as presented.
for the recommendation, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Delaney in a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy? Discussion?
It was, you seconded, Michelle. Delaney.
Roll call?
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Rudy was the second. Yeah.
No bigger.
Sorry, I said.
7.03 is the first reading of about 31 policies, Mr. Chumley and Mrs. Delaney met with myself on Monday night to discuss these policies. We spent about a little bit over an hour discussing these. Many of these revisions are in direct response to changes in Ohio Revised Code or some federal laws, especially regarding our use of the ESSER funds. There are a few policies that are part of our general review that Dr. Foltz did around the 3000s, and many of those are containing changes or clarifications and things like that. Most of these changes were part of Neola's fall update, and there are suggestions that they had for us with our policy. So like I said, we had a thorough review of these policies. I'm not going to go 31 one at a time, but highlights include public participation at board meetings, clarification on what is designated as a weapon based on Ohio Revised Code, and who can carry one on school property, updates to the hazing, PBIS, and student mental health requirements, enrollment of students whose parents are active military, like I said before. We've already done a lot of the things that they asked us to do, but now it's in Ohio Revised Code. Human resources, teaching and learning, finance, and transportation. So there's no action needed tonight, other than this is the first reading of those policies.
For item 7.04, the Wolf Pups Preschool Supervisor and Special Education Supervisor Tyler Lucas is going to present just a few words about our preschool students and some successes and some challenges that we're facing as our preschool continues to grow.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Just
You guys can hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, well, thank you guys for letting me come and talk a little bit about our preschool program. All right, so just for some background, one of the reasons that we have a preschool program has to do with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, that states that children ages 3 through 21 are entitled to a free and appropriate public education for fee. Our preschool program services students ages 3 through 5 years of age, both with special education needs and students that don't have special education needs. In West Clermont, our preschool philosophy is that we believe that young children learn through play and social interaction. Adults arrange environments to maximize the learning of each child. We believe that learning experiences take place in the context of play, and that play is the primary vehicle of learning for young children. We believe that teachers and paraprofessionals facilitate play and learning across all developmental areas, including cognitive, motor, language, social, emotional, and behavioral needs of students. It's hard to talk about preschool without talking about all of the licensing and step up to quality components that go along with preschools. Step up to quality is a 5-star quality rating improvement system that private and public preschools participate in. Step up to quality requires lots of documentation and just paperwork, really, that all classrooms in our district has to maintain in each of our preschool classrooms has a step up quality and licensing binder that we have to update regularly. And it also has on-site visits through ODP that they can come and inspect really at any given time to make sure that we're meeting all of the step up quality standards. At this time, we do not have a step up quality rating. About 3 years ago, we transitioned from being in multiple buildings in our district to just being in 2 buildings. When we did that switch, we had to start the step up the quality process all over again. So we've submitted everything that we need to get a star rating. COVID has just delayed that a bit. The only thing that we're waiting on is our site visit. Once that's completed this year, we expect another 5-star rating from Step Up Quality. Ohio's preschool continuum of service options, so just like with K through 12 school age students, preschool also must consider a continuum of service options for our students. So those options must be general education settings, special education settings, special schools, and even itinerant services within our preschool setting. A model to help look at this would be our least restrictive environment model. So looking at this, we have least restrictive all the way down to most restrictive. It's hard to see that, but least restrictive would be just a regular education classroom setting with no special education, and then most restrictive would be a child's home environment, so they don't ever come to school. West Clermont, the majority of our classrooms operate what we call an integrated preschool classroom model. That falls about right in the middle of the least restrictive and most restrictive model. And our integrated preschool classroom model is where 50% of our students are special education IEP students, and the other 50% of our students are what we call typically developing peer role models. Within this setting, we run an AM classroom and a PM classroom each day. We can have up to 16 students total in each of those class sessions, and we must always maintain that 50-50 special education to typical peer role model ratio at all times. A typical day within our preschool classroom, we have circle time every day where students work on jobs and responsibilities within the classroom. They work on name recognition of their own name and their classmates' names, colors, shapes, weather, movement, calendar. They work on letter of the week. We do center rotations where students get to rotate around the classroom. We have dramatic play, art, sensory tables, work on fine motor skills. And then while students are rotating, we also have our teachers working with students in small groups and in one-on-one on those special education skills. Also, they have books and puzzle time throughout the day. All of our classrooms participate in integrity, phonemic and awareness. Every preschool classroom participates in recess. They have a snack each day. They don't do lunch because they're only in half days. And then they always end their day with a second circle that has a literacy and math focus. Our preschool locations are set up at Holly Hill and Willowville Elementary. We currently have 4 of our integrated preschool classrooms at Holly Hill, both in the morning and in the afternoon. And then we have 5 current integrated preschool classrooms at Willowville Elementary, servicing students in the morning and the afternoon. And then again, in each of those morning and afternoon classes, you can have up to 8 students with special education needs in the morning and afternoon, and then we can have up to 8 typically developing students in the morning and afternoon.
So most classes are around 16 then?
16 is the most that it can be, yes.
And then our kids in the same class every day?
Yes.
Yeah. Or do some days they might be in one class and then another day they might be in another room or
We'll
whatever?
start the year with their classroom teacher, and that's the class that they sit in. Yeah. So that kind of brings us up to our trends with preschool. And looking back 3 years, we have some special education evaluation trends. So going back to the 18-19 school year, we completed a total of 51 special education evaluations, and we recommended those students for our preschool classrooms. In the 19-20 school year, we completed 52 special education evaluations, and we recommended them for our classrooms. And then in 2021 school year, you can see it jumps up all the way to 76 total evaluations that we completed and recommended students for our preschool classroom. So there's quite a big jump from the 1920 school year to the 2021 school year.
Is
Tyler,
that-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, does that use the same criteria? So how we were evaluating kids in 1819, we're evaluating them the exact same way
Exact same.
in 2021, and it just,
Exact same, yeah. Even our teachers have been the same over that period of time. Even our psychologists have been the exact same over that time.
Can you tell them how we find children? Like, how do we come about meeting the preschoolers?
So we have a few different ways that we find students. We have students that are referred from early intervention services where they are in a separate program, and once they're about 2.5 and the program thinks that they still have some special education needs, they'll refer them to their local public school district, and then we have about 6 months to reach out to the family and complete the evaluation process before they turn 3. Once they turn 3, if they qualify for special education services, that's where they would enter our program. Parents can also reach out to the school district and say, I believe my child has special education needs. We send them a packet, they fill out the packet, turn it back into us. We have a psychologist that reviews everything, meets with the family, and determines if we need to proceed with doing the or not. So a combination of those ways are the main 2 ways that we get preschool students. We've also partnered with Child Focused Head Start that run general education classrooms, and sometimes they'll refer students in their classrooms to us as well. So those are really the 3 main ways that we get special education referrals for preschool.
do we ever identify, like in the classroom, like during the school year, where the teacher will be?
Yes, yep, so we'll have half of our class, like I said, are IEP students, the other half are what we call typically developing peer role models. Sometimes when the peer role models start, we see that they actually have some educational concerns that we're worried about, and then at that point we'll refer them for special education as well. So that's another way that happens. So that brings us to this school year. We started this school year with a total of 26 special education openings within our integrated preschool classrooms. As of today, we only have 6 special education openings left in our preschool classrooms. That's combined at Willowville and Holly Hill, and morning and afternoon, only 6 spots total. And we're projecting, and this is an estimate, but approximately 57 initial evaluations remaining for the rest of this school year. That does not take into account any future parent referrals that may come in. In order to stay in compliance, we need to add at least 1 preschool classroom immediately, with a likelihood of needing to add a second preschool classroom at some point this school year.
And we have the space for that?
We do. I know of 2 spaces available that would work well for the preschool classrooms. Yeah.
Good.
Are they both at
It's in
one
the,
building?
yeah, it's in
or-
the current programming through Holly Hill and Willowville, so we wouldn't have, if, you know, in other buildings, we would struggle with space. In those 2 particular buildings, we're doing okay to add these, but we've had to change our relationship with Child Focus and Head Start to make some space though. So it's working, but it's not been without some
We're still
maneuvering.
partnering with Child Focus and Head Start. They just won't physically be in our district.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. And then this is one of our preschool classrooms at Willowville Elementary. Just kind of get a sneak peek into one of our classrooms.
Well, and Tyler, you could probably add some more details even to this description, but just to put it into perspective for everyone, these are the kids that were born and raised during a pandemic. And so the shutting down and being in your family units alone, and you know, if you don't have a sibling, who are you interacting with? And so as students who've been in this tight world enter into a school setting, the learning needs are even more significant than what we're used to seeing. So you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, and we're growing, and I think one of the reasons we're growing has a direct impact on COVID hit, basically everything shut down and people stopped, for the most part, like reaching out to Children's Hospital for services and community partners. Everybody, like Natasha said, just kind of hunkered down.
So all the proactive things that
Right.
could have or would have been going on,
They didn't do
they,
anything.
yeah.
And then when they finally felt like, things are getting back to normal, or maybe they won't ever get all the way back to normal, we need to start doing something. This is where we're seeing an increase in definitely parent evaluations. The severity of need in our special education students in the preschool is dramatically increased from years past. Most of our students in the classroom are severe. A lot of them end up going into our specialized program units once they hit kindergarten and first grade, because they require a lot of intensive support. And really, this is a trend that we're seeing since COVID.
Any other questions for Tyler?
Was that picture taken last year before the
This
mask
is the end of
mandates?
last school year, yeah. They were, I think, celebrating an Olympic Day or something like that. Yeah.
Well, I just noticed all of the students in masks and find it hard to believe that that would be this school year.
Yeah, I would say in a typical classroom right now, we probably have a third of the
Yeah,
students that
yeah,
are still
there are
wearing
many
masks.
Yeah.
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 They have to wear them on the bus, and then they keep them
It
on
is.
once they get there for the most part, yeah.
Well, and I just want to shout out to the staff. We consolidated them together a couple years ago to try to really pour our resources and strengthen the team by connecting them all together. These teachers, we call them unicorns a lot because they have to be regular educators and special educators into one person. And so it's a unique certification.
Right.
It's not easy to find. So like even the post we have right now, how many candidates do we have?
We had 4 applicants, and only one of the 4 had the right credentials that we needed to consider.
And so, and this is something that you can kind of plan for, but you really can never predict in jumping from numbers like 51 to 76, and already we're on pace to probably go past that before the end of the school year.
Right.
And so it makes it hard to find somebody in the middle of the year that randomly has this unique certification.
Right. So we've been doing a lot of networking with, every college and university in the tri-state area within an hour, 2 hours, just trying to form those relationships with them and network and, make sure that we have those relationships in place. So that-
Well, and this is a theme that Dr. Foltz is also working with at the universities, because as it's special ed in general is growing in intensity and in number, and being able to recruit and develop people. We want special education student teachers in our setting. We want people to be a part of us. We have really made some strong changes that we're very proud of. But being able to find substitutes, paraprofessionals, special educators, to be in these roles is very challenging. There's high burnout and turnover, and then just the unique credentialing that goes along with this. And what you have to then predict is, as you see that number turn from 51 to 52 to 76 to then, okay, now they're in kindergarten, now they're in first grade. So all of our programming, it has this ripple effect. And so that often, when you think about a school building, you drive by and you see large school buildings, you see rooms that are classroom size, like a traditional classroom room, and you expect 25, 30 students to be in that room. Well, often, depending on the severity of the needs and the programming that our students involved in, there could be 4 people, 5 people that need a room that is the size of a room where 30 students chairs would go. So it's, even if you look at a footprint of one of our buildings and kind of map it out, it can be deceiving as to what we really have the capacity for. So thank you, Tyler, so much for stepping into this leadership gig. You've only been a preschool person under COVID, right? Basically, or maybe you've got a few months. Yes, and so he worked very successfully in our middle school, did great things, and really wanted to expand and expand his wings and learn some new things. And he has been an excellent leader for us, and just gobbled it up. And when he says a binder, he really means a binder that's like this thick. Like he'd have to get a wheelbarrow maybe to carry it around.
Yeah.
It's very intensive compliancy. But we are committed to making sure that we are 5 stars, and so he's done all that work with the team. So,
Yep.
thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, up next, we're going to be hearing from the middle school, represented by Megan Lawson today, and Ross is here, right? Hello, welcome, principal of West Clermont Middle School. And just want to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into the impact that the decisions and the investments that you guys supported for us and how they are affecting the middle school and what we see ahead of us.
I think we're getting approached up on the point right here. Yes, thank you so much for having us this evening, and thank you so much for these onward and upward investments. I wanted to start actually by giving a huge shout out to the middle school staff. I'm going to modify a quote from Todd Whitaker. He says, the greatest thing about working in a school is that it matters. The hardest thing about working in a school is that it matters every day. And so I can't help but be deeply inspired every time I'm around teachers and the staff. They're working so hard to meet the needs of students. I'm really excited to share with you many of the things that are happening this school year as a result of these incredible investments. So, good, it does work. Slick. All right. So I first wanted to just point out to you that a thread that you'll see throughout this presentation are connections to our vision, our values, RISE, relationships, innovation, being student-centered and empowerment. And speaking of those relationships and that student-centered piece, I'm going to invite Mr. Hudson to talk a little bit about counseling and special education support.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. With our counseling, our school counselors, and our adding 2 school counselors and adding a case manager to the middle school is giving us great support to be able to meet with individual students a lot more with our 2 additional counselors. Our counselors have did a wonderful job of meeting with our kiddos in the first 4 days of school, just to learn them, just to know who they are, so the kids knew who they were, and the school counselors knew who they were. So it was awesome to see those walking through the hallways. It aligned closer to the ASCA model, which is the American School Counselor Association. We had a great opportunity this summer to go down and go to the ASCA conference, and it was one of the best conferences I've ever got to attend with our school counselors. They brought a lot of things back, and they're aligning both the high school and the middle school in the ASCA model. So it's a wonderful piece to add to the middle school. We also, with the gain of the 2 school counselors, they also are able to help us with positive behavior, PBIS. It gives us 2 more eyes in of creating new ideas and expanding our MTSS with Tier 2 and Tier 3 programs at the middle school. They also bring more to the table, add 2 more school counselors to the table. We also get to bring in more small groups for our kiddos that need more support in different places. And using those 4 days and some different data that they use, they can create the groups that are needed for a certain population of students. And they're more easy to meet with those students and with their needs and the social emotional pieces. We also got the pleasure of adding a case manager to our special education. Ms. Malie is awesome, does a wonderful job. The case manager is someone that can help our special ed supervisor and be more of a liaison and mentoring and helping more students. Mentoring our teachers, stepping in and helping those in different places in the special ed and IEP process, and just being able to be just that soundboard for new ideas and possible solutions that are needed within our classrooms, both on the special education side and the general education side. So it's awesome. Thank you guys for letting us have the opportunity to have one of the school counselors and with a case manager.
So when I was in school, which long ago, I didn't really recall having counselors in the middle school, and I don't know if we did. But I do remember counselors in the high school. How does a counselor in the middle school differ from a counselor in the high school? Because the high school would, they help me get my, whatever credits I need, help me with applications for college and all that. Obviously, they're not going to do college applications in middle school, but what do they do to help the middle schoolers that is different from what they would help in the high school?
In Asset Model, they're school counselors, not guidance counselors. And when I was in school, we had guidance counselors, and I was fortunate enough to have those school counselors as well. It's almost a bad word to use the word guidance counselor in middle school, because they are school counselors. They are not working, they work together with the high school to build those pieces to move on. But they also are there for the social emotional pieces that we can help with the creation of Hope Squad and web leaders and all those different pieces. They can support all those pieces for our students and support more needs on the needs of our students.
I'll give an example. They might survey the kids after meeting with them and find out that some kids in the school are dealing with grief. And so they might pull some students together to have a grief group to understand that there's other people that they can lean on. Or anxiety and stress, just how do I manage 7 periods a day and plus athletics and all that. So they might have a group to come together just to deal with some stress management techniques or time management techniques, or it could be leadership. So it's a wide array of very niche skills that a middle schooler might be struggling with. And so that's like what they would do in small groups. And then they do programming across the whole school that is more career ed related, trying to get them to tap into their skills and their interests to start readying them for what will be the courses that you're going to sign up for in middle school, in high school, and what kinds of grades do you need to have in middle school to then set you up for success. And with our large school, having more counselors is really allowing that more of a personal touch, that we've been able to reduce the ratio of students to counselors, and they're able to do systematic wide things and then one-on-one support with students. Now they're not therapists, but they do serve as a system to kind of refer. They can do threat assessments to really understand, is this student a threat to themselves or others, and help bring in the other layers of resources that they need. So it really is an essential in the middle school because of the emotional, hormonal, everyone trying to figure themselves out and figure out how to be. It's an essential role that goes beyond just the academics in the classroom. And so you look at it from an academic, behavioral, and then a college and career kind of role. And that's why you say they make a big deal about the difference between, it's not a guidance counselor, it's a school counselor, because it's about knocking down every barrier that you can so that you can be ready to learn.
So by us helping the kids in a difficult time adjust to more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic, it's helping them become better learners, essentially is what I hear, is that it's setting them up for success later on. Whereas if we were just ignoring that and just, you come in and learn your multiplication tables and how to do this and be on your way, that we're not setting them up to succeed.
Yes, and especially when you think about social media and the impact of social media on our young adolescents' lives, they just have access to a lot of information, and there's FOMO, fear of missing out. The whole world unfolds on social media. When we were in school, we didn't know if there was a birthday party happening. We didn't know that we weren't invited to it because you couldn't see that it was happening. Now you see that you weren't there and everybody else who was. And so it's those kinds of things that just crush and shatter our kids. And so it's helping people go in and learn those digital citizenship skills and learn to figure out how to cope and build their confidence really in leadership, which it's a huge challenge, and it carries on into the high school, as Mr. Gephardt knows.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Very good. Thank you.
We thank you for that. All five bars that do such a great job on building.
Well, and I'll celebrate Mr. Hudson. He went up to Columbus to recognize Robin at the conference just a few weeks ago as the Ohio Counselor of the Year, Robin Hayter. So I know we celebrated her last month, but that was Mr. Hudson starts his day very early, and he went to Columbus and came to work the next day. So we appreciate that.
She deserves every piece of it.
Thank you. Yeah, just to give you a number for that caseloads for those counselors, they were close to 625 on their caseload, and now they're closer to 425. So that's still a big job. It's certainly not where the ASK model would say they're supposed to be, but it's an improvement, and so we cannot thank you enough for that. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. I want to talk a little bit about the instructional coaches. So we have a English language arts instructional coach who is shared between the middle school and the high school full-time this year. And it's very exciting work that she's been able to do with teachers, and also a technology integration coach who is shared between both buildings. And then we've been able to get our math coach from the Hamilton County ESC for a bit more days this year. And some of the work that they're doing is incredibly exciting. I just want to say I've gotten the opportunity to work in a lot of different schools, and it's incredible to me how open the teachers are here to coaching. It's not true everywhere that teachers are that way. It says a lot about the mindset of the teachers and their relentless focus on kids and what's best for kids, and being willing to be vulnerable and try new things, all in the spirit of doing what's right by children. So I just want to give them a shout out and say that says a lot about our coaches to be able to build that kind of relationship with them. So our coaches, they model teach, or they'll go in and take over the class and allow the teacher to see the instruction and then give them feedback. Then they'll co-teach together and actually take over the class together, and then they'll also give feedback to the teacher watching the teacher teach. And they'll also provide real-time feedback to teachers in a variety of ways, but one of the ways that they have been demonstrating some fun learning and collaboration lately is they've been taking groups of teachers around the school to get into other teachers' classrooms and see instruction and then talk about what they're seeing and celebrate the moves that other teachers are making that they can take right back into their own classes, which has been really powerful. They also support Wolf Wins, I'll talk about that in a minute, in the area of literacy and growing our students' literacy skills, and certainly in the area of technology integration. And I want to quote each of our coaches. I asked them, what's your favorite thing about coaching in West Clermont? And I just want to elevate their voices and shout out their names. So Angela Falkiver is our ELA coach, and she says that the best part of my job is getting to support teachers as they make the moves to help students see themselves as readers and writers. So if you can't see it, you can't be it. And helping students to identify themselves, that I'm a reader and I'm a writer and I can do this. Flexing those muscles. In math, Mike Ross from Hamilton County ESC, he says, I love working with a community that values and demonstrates lifelong learning. Everyone is willing to reflect, grow, and implement something new if they think it will help students. So back to that mindset piece that has just always impressed me here. And then finally, Sarah Kaufman, Technology Integration Specialist. She says, the best part about coaching has been building relationships and establishing trust with the teachers. As a result, I can see how our work has a positive impact on students. So I just love hearing those words. I get chills when I read it. I'm going to transition us now into the last part of our presentation, the middle school experience. Being able to reallocate resources to support those unique needs of our middle school learners. In a few ways, Wolf Wins in flex time, so having time built into the schedule every single day where students can receive academic intervention, but also can get some enrichment opportunity, inquiry-based learning, authentic exploratory learning opportunities that follow their unique interests and connect to real-world problems that they want to solve. Also, you've heard, I'm sure, about caring school communities from the elementary. That's been expanded into the middle school and allowing children through that literacy program and curriculum, the ability to just continue to grow their sense of belonging and well-being in their school. Web, where everyone belongs, so students taking ownership over their school and caring for one another, and leadership opportunities for them to continue to grow that sense of community of the school and have everybody take pride in taking really good care of their school and each other. And then the sixth grade experience, and there's so many cool things that go into the sixth grade experience. That's a really important transition year, as you know, and creating that sort of like smaller feel for them, where they have two teachers who each teach a core content, so it's a smaller teacher team versus a more robust teacher team, because you might have somebody who teaches social studies and math, and you've got the other teacher who teaches science and ELA. So you have, a nice little transition from middle school, having like more breaks in their day, like a recess, which is much more in line with, where they are developmentally from that elementary level. And also having access to a library aid to create more opportunities for students to access choice reading books, just to name a few. So, all of this, I think, is just a small step in the direction of our first year graduate. We certainly haven't arrived, but we're very excited about these things. And, it's the people that make West Clermont so special. It's our kids, it's our staff, it's our parents, it's the community. And there's a quote that I love that inspires me to just keep pushing us forward, and it's that a bad system will beat a good person every time. So how do we keep looking at our system, the system of school, figure out how we might continue to modernize and reinvent and forward so that we can prepare our schools for the modern workforce and the lives that they desire. Any questions for me?
It was outstanding.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you both very much.
And our middle school 6th grade principal is out. She has many children in her family, and everyone's taken their turn with COVID, and she's gotten her turn. So I know. So we are everyone's supporting one another, doing the best we can. Everybody has their story, and we just keep putting one step forward. But we are certainly very proud of the work that the middle school team has done, coming together as really one team. And it's really hard to engage middle school kids in this era that we've been in and what they've had to deal with the last 18 months. And so it's a big challenge, and it's causing us to really have to rethink a lot of things. And I'm so proud of the staff for just continuing to like roll up their sleeves and figure out like what the best next move is. So, okay, for my comments, I first want to thank Lisa Courtney, principal of Summerside, for hosting us tonight. Sherry Coffey was here with her vacuum cleaner, like everyone was coming over for, Thanksgiving dinner or something, but taking very much pride in this work. Sherry always does a nice job, and just wanted to make sure that every detail was covered. It's very nice to see some Summerside parents here tonight as well, so thank you for coming. Larry Priest and Andy I have spent several moments here over the last couple days just getting everything just right down to the American flag so that we would have everything that we needed from the boardroom. So thank you for that. Today was a special day in West Clermont. As administrators, we all divide and conquer on this day. We go to the cafeterias and support Tiffany McLeese and her team in celebrating Thanksgiving. So kids were walking around with apples and turkey and gravy and green beans and goldfish crackers and pumpkin pie, like trying to make it to their seats because their plates were very full today. So it was fun to have a celebration of a feast. Jeffrey and I were at WT today, and just the second graders were like, are we going to do this again in 3rd grade? Like they couldn't believe it was happening. So so it was fun. They missed some of those kind of traditions when we were in an awkward situation before. So I'm just so proud of our lunch staff. And while you're in the cafeterias, you're remembering we've got case managers working in our schools, deans of students. The custodian at WT is just like a big old teddy bear. Jeremy is amazing with those kids, and Jeremy on the mic just gets 80 kids like right where they need to be. We have recess monitors and cafeteria support that just kind of help the gears turn better. Now we do have a few openings also, so if anybody's looking to help support us, we've got some, and they need a job, we've got some room. We definitely have some room for support, but we're just thankful for everybody investing in, and it's clear, you can look at everyone's face, everyone needs a break, so we know we're coming up on that, we're excited about it. Upcoming, we have Eric Jewell is working with HealthSource, our partners. They're going to be using our facilities to offer vaccinations for our students, and so some details will be coming out about that as HealthSource, our core partner. And it'll be an opportunity, it'll be after hours, and it'll be a time when, did I misspeak at all? Okay, after hours where parents will actually come along their students, and so that's how that will be facilitated. The Thanksgiving feast, a huge tradition with our students being such service-minded kiddos. On Wednesday, November 24th from 5 to 7, the high school will be hosting the 6th annual Thanksgiving feast for families, and there's some new details here, so I want to make sure I get this right. Meals will be ready to heat and pick up curbside this year at the middle school, West Clermont Middle School. And we'll be working together this year with the Wolfpack Pantry, so Missy Baston, and they'll be able to pick them up at the middle school. If you have any questions about it, calling the high school is the best bet because the sign-ups close this Friday. So we want to make sure that any family, anybody in our community is interested, will learn about that. It is every year just seeing that the kids have such pride in being able to support our community in this way. It's a great event. We have also, I want to mention, we're having a math education parent night. We've talked here in the boardroom several weeks or several months in a row about our investment in the math course of study and being able to update our math curriculum. And so one really important component to us is being able to get parent voice into the story and to really understand, so what is it like to help your 3rd grader with math at home? What does that look like? And when, people talk about new math or having to get on Desmos or just all these products and names that are just not like how we all learned math. And so we're going to be bringing the parents in with our teaching and learning team and the math course of study teacher volunteers on Tuesday, December 1st. It's going to be at 7 o'clock at Willowville. And our goal really is to understand the student or the parent experience a little bit more. So as we're making decisions about curriculum, that we're taking in their needs into consideration and taking their ideas to help shape as we reimagine and modernize our math curriculum. So again, December 1st or at 7 o'clock. This will be coming out in the principal's updates this week. It'll be in our newsletter that's coming out, and there's a way to RSVP. So it's not necessarily required to RSVP, but we just want to get a sense of the count. Now, so those are all the good things. I want to talk about just some things that are causing me some concern that I just want to put on your radar. As we have been spending time here after first quarter, really analyzing, so how are things going? There's a couple things that have bubbled up as concerns. One is student attendance. And this is a really tricky topic right now because obviously with the pandemic still among us, obviously with all the messaging of if you're not feeling well, stay home, be overly cautious. That's been the message, for over 18 months. That it's hard to then focus on attendance and make a big deal about it. We need people to be at school. But as you look at the data, you see a much smaller number of students who, in the middle school and high school specifically, that are out for COVID reasons versus just out, unexcused. And so it's really a sign to us that we've got to dig in further. Why are the kids out? Is it health related beyond something different than COVID? Is this about transportation? Is this about I need to be home with my family to take care of a family responsibility? Do I hate coming to school? Am I being bullied? All the things that we wonder about, we're digging in to find out more because it is a very clear, when you look at our data of academics first quarter and you look at attendance first quarter, there's a direct correlation. If you're not here, you're not doing well. And if you are here, things are looking up for you. There's no gray matter here. It is black and white. And so we've got to get our students to school. We've got to get this message out to our parents because, and I'll go back to this. It made me laugh, but it's not really funny. I was talking to it was another third grader one day, early in the school year, and he's like, "Oh, Mrs. Adams liked school last year so much better. I didn't even have to get up if I didn't want to." And he was a student that chose not to come face to face. And so. How many of those kids in that list are students that were online from last year and they're just struggling coming back to brick and mortar? How many that are just kind of tired of school and the way that it's had to be? Who knows? But we've got to know more, and we've got to partner with our families because it's very, very concerning, the disengagement. Secondly, we've been working hard to update all of our enrollment. Mike, I don't know if you have a number for me, but we still have parents from the beginning of the school year that haven't not enrolled their kids, but just updated all their information. And when you don't update your information by this point in the year, that means you're not able to look at a student's report card. You're missing some information about your kiddo. And we still have quite a few. But do you have an estimate?
I can estimate probably 20% still haven't updated their, what we used to call InfoSnap information.
That's a pretty large number, 20% of our whole school system. And so I share these challenges as things that we are working to get our arms around, but that the disconnect between how our schools are functioning, how families are functioning, and how we can better do that dance together. Because we know everyone's struggling and everybody has a story, and we're not here to judge. We're just here to advocate for doing what's best for kids and to really say we want to partner with parents. And so maybe some ways we are trying to do the partnership is not working anymore. And that's kind of what's hard and makes our job, everyone's really tired in our system right now, especially teachers, is that things that used to kind of just work like a charm are not so charming anymore. And we're really having to rethink a lot of things, down to basic things, like just getting people in the door. And so that's where you get the drain. That's where you get the teacher feeling like, I used to think I was good at this, and I don't feel good any day I show up. I'm not reaching my kids in the way that I used to. And it can be depressing, it can be sad, it can be discouraging. And so we all have to kind of like work to pick each other up and just say, no, this is a worthy cause. The kids need us. We got to do this. But it's a constant, and it's so. I'm bringing it to your attention as because we don't talk about attendance a lot here, like at the boardroom table. But that is something that over the course of the next couple meetings, we want to bring more and more of that data to you, so that we can really understand what is the impact of what our students have been through, how our families are experiencing the pandemic, and how do we re-engage kids in school, because their future depends on it. And with that, just one other thing, I just want to thank the board. We were able to have Mr. Rudy, Mrs. Brinkman, Mrs. Delaney were able to join us at OSBA. We were at the state conference over the last couple of weeks, and I say to you guys all the time, being a board member is probably one of the most thankless jobs in a school system, maybe in a whole community. And the effort and the time that you guys put in behind the scenes to make this look very simple and just easy is really incredible. And I just want to thank you on behalf of the whole community for just those above and beyond efforts that you guys spend in learning more, trying to take this district to the next level, supporting us, because it really means a lot. So thank you for that.
I'd like to also mention that we also had Mr. Patton, who joined us up in
Oh,
Columbus.
yes, I'm sorry.
So,
how did I forget that?
He's
I'm sorry.
board-elect, and I appreciate him spending some time with us to learn more and be ready to go in January. So.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So we are very excited. What we'll do as a board in December, we're going to celebrate Mr. Sheff because it'll be his last board meeting with us. So everybody come back for that, and then we'll be moving into the new year, planning a new organization for the Board of Education, getting our calendar ready for the year, getting our kind of topics that we need to tackle, and getting Mr. Patton oriented. So. That's all I have. Do you guys have questions for me? I know you have a lot to say, so it's time for us to be quiet.
That's the clock.
Yeah.
Good. So move on to the treasurer's report. So I have two items that I have for you tonight. One of them, before we get to those action items, I'm going to do a presentation on one, which is for the 5-year forecast. We can do that. If it's okay, I'm going to stand up here in order to do that. Probably the only nervous thing right now is like the clock is behind me and not in front of me. And, I don't think leaders of that. I turned it off. I'll say that. Okay. So I'll be conscious of time as we go through this and do this with it. But to start off with the 5-year forecast, and always going to do things is really give recognition and show appreciation to that made a lot of things happen in this district. And so first of all, to the residents of this district, and I repeat this a lot of times, is because I think we need to be appreciative of it and recognize it. But the passage of that levy in May of 2020 was a significant milestone for this district. It brought in $11.5 million. It brought it in at a time when it was not easy for people just during the onset of a pandemic. So we must recognize that we appreciative to the residents for passing that, and not only passing that, but you have to follow through, with your taxes for that. So we appreciate that. To the employees in this district, whether they're the teacher in the front of the classroom or the person that locks up the school at night, they've seen us through the pandemic. They made sure that the school was the safest, important place for students to be. Made sure it was the safest place for kids to be during that time. And then the Board of Education, superintendent, leadership team that's here, for their focus, for their adherence on the commitments that we made to the community, that we made to the students on doing that. And so it's easy for me to talk about finances, but finances are really supporting the things that these people are really all about. So what is this 5-year forecast that we have to do? It started back in the late 90s with doing it. First thing, it's a management planning tool. Okay, so it's not just a bunch of numbers on a sheet of paper that we need to put down to see where we end up 5 years up the road. It really is integrated into the strategic planning of the school district and how we fund things going forward. It's a requirement. Both the Department of Education and the Auditor of State's Office have a legislative obligation, a legal obligation to have oversight of school districts. So they have to file these documents twice a year. They do look at it. If we don't meet certain benchmarks, they're allowed to, they're obligated to put a school district into financial distress. That could be fiscal caution, fiscal watch, fiscal emergency. If the numbers are right, they can even come into emergency and basically take you over to do that. The report includes 3 years of history. We kind of look back to see where we are, to help us look forward with it. It contains the current year and then 4 years projection of where we're going to be. What it looks at is what's our current operations, plus what are the things that in that strategic plan, within that planning horizon that we need to do, build into it. The projections are based upon the most accurate information available at that time. I can tell you that I've had drafts of this 5-year forecast going back a month and a half. And the 5-year forecast was changed as recently as Monday morning's cabinet meeting. Today, when we met with the staff, the superintendent asked me to review it, and I don't think it was, a subversive action to say, but there was some staffing needs that were there, and they're built into the plan. Okay, so it is the most up-to-date information. Nobody busted through the doors today, so I didn't have to change it right away. But it does take into consideration the most current information that we have to do it. For me, it guides the ability to sign a fiscal certificate. And that's not just words. What it means is that if we want to spend money, we have to have money available for this year and into the future to do it. So this past summer, we settled 2 collective bargaining agreements with our staff. We were able to do that for 3 years. We were able to do that for 3 years because we had the money going out 3 years in our 5-year forecast. Okay, if you'll recall, at least the past 2 collective bargaining agreements and settlements, they were just for 1 year because there was that inability to sign that certificate. Okay, so the 5-year forecast guides all those things in order to do that. Okay, just a slight overview, and the forecast is made up of really 2 things. It's made up of those financial projections, okay, which we're required to fill out, the sources of revenues, the expenditures, how much money we have left. But it is also required for us to have notes that go along with that. And sometimes that's probably the most important thing, because that's really the behind the curtain stuff that tells what those numbers are all about. Okay, so some of the highlights of the forecast for this year to do it. It includes the levy that was passed in May of 2020. One of the things about that is taxes are collected on the calendar year. So when that vote was in calendar 2020, May of 20, collection didn't start until January of 21. So during fiscal year 21, the period that ended last June 30th, we only received 50% of that money. The current fiscal year, July 1 of 21 through June 30th of 22, will be the first year, okay, almost 18 months later, right, in May, and June 30th of 22, that we received that whole year collection into our property taxes, okay, that we received. The forecast includes, there was a reappraisal of the property values in 2020. That collection of that reappraisal was in 2021. We had good fortune in having an increase of those property values, which brought additional revenue to the district. We talked about, under upward plans, 90 different investments that we have. We were able to fund some of that in the general fund because of that increase in the reappraisal. One of the things you'll note, and been drilled into the leadership team and everybody, that we really have to follow that postulate of if we have expenses we need to do, okay, there's a matching of the revenue. If it's something that's ongoing, okay, we can match it with that ongoing revenue. If we have one-time only revenue, like our ESSER funding, we have $14 million over 2 ESSER periods. That is the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief, okay, from the federal government. That $14 million is one-time only. It doesn't continue on. It lasts through fiscal year 24. And so those are the big investments that we're making in our staff, in our program, and different things that just are one-time only. There's a cliff to that. Okay. A big change in this forecast as we look forward. okay? It's driven by two components. Our mix of revenue historically was significantly, was almost a share. I believe it was like 52-48 locally, and then the state. That shift has taken place where the state is only making up about 38% of our revenue. Okay. That has some implications to it that we'll talk about a little bit later. The FY21 expenses, what's built into that, it's really at the level of maintenance of continued services, plus we had the additional funding that was brought about by the reappraisal. Those things have been spoken for and built into the expenditure tab. The good news is, okay, as we put all these numbers together, and we'll show you this, okay, is that our projection gives us a good balance through June 30th of 26. Okay, we made the commitment to our community with the passage of that levy that we make it last through fiscal year 24, and we're able to do that on the current projection. We're able to make it through 25, and we don't start seeing some downward trend in our cash balance until 25 and 26. Okay, so that's some positive news that we have with this projection. Having said that, on the cash balance, we start looking at where our expenses exceed our revenues in fiscal year 25. Okay, so that's kind of a milestone or a marker in the road on our financial roadmap that we need to be conscious of. As our cash balances go down, it's really driven by expenditures exceeding our revenue. So we look forward to that. Cash balances over the time period from now through 25 have improved. If you look back to the fiscal year 20 year, our cash balance only covered about a month of expenses. Through 23, 4, and 5, we're looking at 60-day coverage on that, which is good. That's where we want to be. Okay, that's what we want to fall back on. Okay.
So we're not looking to having to do that short-term borrowing like we did.
The only caution that I have had, and a couple weeks ago, there was some concern from the county auditor's office, not in their operations, but there was concern of whether or not there would be a delay from the State Department of Taxation, because the county auditor has to submit and certify numbers to the State Department of Taxation, which then certifies it back on the rates. And we're notified that there could be a delay. But I don't believe we'll have to the extent. But if there is that delay, that January, February time period is going to be the low point before we get the tax collections from the first half. Okay, so that's a good question.
Well, and all the ESSER funds aren't released either.
Correct.
So that's just a variable.
There's been a delay
Yeah.
in getting the ESSER funds. We're spending that money and we have to file for reimbursement for it. So when we don't have that money, that pulls it from the general fund to do that. So it's been a delay in that, but we hope that gets revenue by the end of the year too. Okay. So what's our revenue line look like? What's our expenditure line look like? So on the graph here, that we have the blue line is the revenue, the red line is the expenditures. And what you'll see on that blue line is kind of a stair step. If you look at, it's kind of a hockey stick starting at fiscal year 19 through 20, a little bit downward there, and then all of a sudden in 20, 21 to 22 shoots up. That was the passage of the levy, plus the additional revenue from the reappraisal. Okay, we step up. But then after that 22 year, what you see is that flat lines. Okay? But the revenues in most school districts are flat until you pass a levy, they step up, okay, and then they go flat again until you pass a levy and they step up. So the revenues kind of stair step, okay, based on local property taxes to do that. The expenditure line, kind of a more level upward trend, kind of follows inflation, kind of follows the growth of a school district, whether it is through additional students or through additional programming, then it steps it up. One of the things you'll note over time is that expenditure line has an upward slope that is more accelerated than the revenue line. So that's why you have to every 4 or 5 years, 6 years, okay? This district went quite a few years, okay, without new money, okay? You'll see that those lines cross during fiscal year 25. What that means is our expenses are greater than our revenue, and so our cash balances that we build up will start to deplete, okay? So we keep an eye on that. So by the way, I told you about the cabinet meeting earlier, how we looked at things. We actually sat there with our model, and as we were talking about adding positions and doing things, we ran into that model. I think some people were looking at the end of 22. I'm looking at the end of 25, 26. Everybody started looking at it. So whatever you add now has a more significant impact 1, 2, 3, 4 years up the road to do that. So again, the good story is we do increase our cash balances from 22 through 25. Okay, keeps us healthy, and then those lines start to cross there. As I mentioned, kind of the benchmark we look at is our coverage on the days of cash. And so at the end of the fiscal years, you'll see the big jump from fiscal year 21 through 22 because of that revenue collection, okay? We go from 29 days actual cash to projected to 60, 63, down to 58, and then it starts to go down a little bit, okay? From 22 to 24 is a solid place for us to be in. That's the target where we want to be to do that. Okay. So what's our general fund revenue mix look like? When we look at that total revenue picture, the real estate taxes are about 54%. The public utility tax is 4%. Other local 4%. So we are up to almost 62% support locally. On the state foundation side, it's 30. On the state funding side, it's 38%. Okay. The other impact that we had this year was the new state funding formula, which is House Bill 110. If you hear the news or look at the papers, that's called the Fair School Funding Formula. That did pass and go through. Okay, and the big impact of that was it lowered our revenues from the state. But at the same time, in that formula, we did not have to, as in the past, have a deduction for charter schools, for entrance vouchers, and for scholarships. Okay, so the revenue went down, but also on the expenditure side, that went down as well too. Okay, both of them went down too. Again, just looking at where we were in the past in local revenue, we were at 52% in fiscal year 19. State revenue was at 48%. If you jump forward to this current fiscal year, FY22, we're at 62% locally, nearly a 10% jump, and we're at 38% on the state. Okay, that's kind of maintained. It goes up a percentage or so. The estimate through FY26 to 63%, down to 37% from the state. So if everything kind of holds true for that projection, okay, again, in 19, we're kind of equal partners. As you accelerate, 3 years from that point to this year, okay, we're about as close to 60-40, and it goes up from there to that both. Okay, so that is probably my view, a big thing that we have to look at, and there's some implications of that we'll go over a little bit later on of what we need to do because of that.
Is that a trend that other districts like ours are seeing, or is that something that's unique to us?
So I'm not an attorney, but I'll give you the attorney answer, and that's it depends. Okay, so I think a lot of school districts will see that because of the where we were getting revenue that was flowing through to pay for charter schools, students of the charter schools, students of the entrance vouchers, and the scholarships. As that money's taken out, it will lower the revenue. So you'll see some of that. Probably more drastic in our district than others. You'll see some other school districts where that funding formula over time, okay, is more advantageous to them. You may see that their state funding goes up. Okay, so it's not, it doesn't treat everybody equally. It depends on that local situation to do that. That's a great question, to do that, so.
And you get different amounts of money based on the profile of the student.
Right. The big change with, as the superintendent is stating, the big change with that funding formula, it looks first locally at what you should be spending based on your student population. And it adds different weights to the demographics of that population, of the needs of the students, okay? So the higher the needs, the higher the expense. The higher that expense, the more funding they say that you need. And that's just calculating what you need. It's not saying who's paying it yet, whether it's local or state, okay? So once that's determined, then it's determined who pays what, how much from the state, how much local.
Which always makes it confusing because it's not really fully funded. And so like that becomes a misnomer, a misunderstanding is that here's the funding formula, but it's not fully funded. So you don't end up, it doesn't end up as fair as it sounds in the title.
Right. Well, and I think that causes confusion for our community members because they may believe that the district is misappropriating the spending when it's actually our, we're not getting what we used to from the state, so.
Or what we should get.
Or what we should get.
And the point you're making is great because what it actually shows, now that that money isn't flowing through to those other choices, okay, it shows a truer picture of the revenue, okay? So some of that percentage increase was probably already there, but because it was kind of bulked up, okay, it kind of camouflaged that. So this does show a truer picture of what's being paid locally versus from the state. Okay, some of the uncertainties and challenges with the revenues, we need to look at the balance, okay, local economic development, different tax exemption options, okay, which are available to any school district, or not school district, but to the overlapping government such as a city or a township or a county. Okay, we got to be conscious of that and we can work with our local overlapping governments. We really have to monitor the effects of the Fair School Funding Plan, okay, so as that has created changes, we want to make sure that we're guaranteed dollars for this biennium. We're guaranteed what we received in 21, okay? But beyond that, it's a legislative choice. So after this biennium, okay, we're dependent upon what occurs legislatively to fund that formula. The second part of that is from our district perspective, what do we need to advocate for? I'm an advocate for the fact that there's no question that, we needed a new formula. But if the state, per se, is maybe increasing the total education budget 15%, and we get 0 to 3%, then we got to speak up about that. Okay? So we really need to know ahead of time fully what that formula is all about, and to do our advocacy for the school district in the future. One of the things to note is, again, this is a projection, best information of this time. We still do not have the actual funding calculation from the Department of Education for our state revenue. I went through the calculation. We have a consultant that goes through the calculation. We pretty much are in the same ballpark with it, but we're still waiting until December to get that actual calculation. Okay. The House Bill 110 eliminates the open enrollment revenues, so it really focuses on the students that are coming here, that we educate. The increase from House Bill 110, we did get a net gain. That net gain, although the revenues went down, the expenditures went down because of those tuition amounts of greater amounts. Okay, so we did have a net gain with it. That's part, if you look at the difference between our May forecast and this forecast, some of the additional cash balance, because our expenses on the tuition side went down greater than what the state funding went down. Okay, that's an important thing to note there. In the past, student wellness and success funds were in a separate revenue line item. They got added back to the general fund. The story there is though we still have to spend that money that's coming from the state. It's not as discretionary as the other state funding is. We have to spend it on certain things. Okay? We still are confronted with, our ability to seek other revenue sources. Okay, look at that. The only thing I talked about was local and state. Okay, we've got to be conscious that we have to look at other places for that funding. Okay. On the expense side, okay, our wages and benefits and a compensation package that makes up about 75%. We do have included in that, we were fortunate enough to have, as I mentioned, the settlement of those collective bargaining agreements. It is a great position to go out 3 years to have that done. It's great that the leadership of the bargaining units understood our situation. Walk away with a 1% each year for 3 years, and we need to give them recognition for that as we go forward. Our benefits are the second highest cost. The concern that I have over the benefits is our insurances only went up 1.2% this year, but if you look at the actual claims trend, it is about 5 to 7% over what's expected. That's going to catch up with us. So I know that during calendar year 22, our insurance benefits are locked in at that 1.2% increase, but full well know that the increase beyond that is going to probably be between 5 to 8%. That's built into the projection. I built 8% into that. You'll see on the purchase services, the dollar amount's reduced because that's where the tuition payments used to be. To do that. Okay? Because of the fact that in the plan that we built in the strategic initiatives and we built in the onward and upward initiatives into the plan to do that. You'll see with this chart, I mentioned that the expenses kind of go up at a steady pace. If you look at the different components of it, it's almost an even increase with it. One of the concerns I have with the expense categories is inflation. Post-COVID, we are in a different economic environment. Everybody wants to talk about supply chain, everybody wants to talk about logistics, but that adds to inflation. All you have to do is look at the prices of houses, all you have to do is go to the grocery store. Those same inflationary impacts hit us too with that. We did build some inflation so our challenge is really looking at the effects of House Bill 110 on the expense side. Some of the categories of revenue they gave us within the state funding, we're going to have to spend in a certain way. Okay? We're already doing that, but as we look into the future, it's going to be more required and discretionary on our part. That's a big change to do that. The uncertainty of funding in the next couple bienniums is really still all based on legislative action. It's not going to be it's based on the formula on how to do it, but legislative action on what the funds are. Again, locally, we're just looking at the needs of our students, and as we come out of this pandemic, as we discussed earlier today, those needs have increased to do that. So kind of ending where we started with that revenue picture. We're in pretty good shape through FY24. We made the commitment to that the lines start crossing, the expense and revenue lines start crossing in fiscal year 25. When the other balances FY26. So what's our call to action? What do we want to do? As always, things could happen between now and fiscal year 24, but we want to keep our commitment top line, our commitments to voters, to the community. We do want to be advocating to protect our revenues locally, while at the same time have a realization be valued as we go forward. We do want to advocate at the state level for our fair share of the Fair School Funding Plan, okay? So that we get the right amount of increases as the state increases the education budget. We need to continually look for alternative revenue sources to offset anything we do. We need to continue to appropriately match expenses. That really goes back to, because we have the ESSER funding that goes through FY24, that's a cliff that ends, doesn't continue. So that's one-time only expenses. If it's ongoing, we need to make sure that we have that funding in the ongoing general funds so that we can do those things. We continue to look at spending our dollar with more efficiency and effectiveness. One of the things that's built into here is Mr. Overby knows, and Mr. Bruce knows, and critical people know, we made a significant investment in software the past 12 months, okay? That's not to make things easier, it's to make things more efficient and effective for us. So we can make better decisions and make our jobs more efficient. The 3 and 5 year, what we need to put together is with this 5-year forecast, one of the things that we will be approaching in January through March is making a more detailed spending plan. And so as you look at this as kind of a high level, limited line items to look at going forward, we need to take our current budget, look at how we build the fiscal year 23 budget, and extend that into fiscal year 24 and 25. We can create a more detailed roadmap of our expense budget as we go forward. I think that's pretty important that we do that. We want to make sure we keep our constituents informed and involved. So this presentation, the 5-year forecast, the notes of that will be put on the website, but we need to go beyond that. We need to be in touch with the community. We need to do more presentations so that people really understand how we're financed as we go forward. We have to make sure that ESSER funds 2 and 3, the $14 million, we use strategically. As we go forward, there are going to be spending differences. We need to make sure that those don't degrade on the general fund. Okay, and we make sure that as we go forward, we just use those funds appropriately. We need to monitor the impact of onward and upward. That is a significant investment to this district. Okay. It has some specific outcomes, but we need to make sure we are monitoring that so that we achieve those outcomes to do that. Okay. So, nearly a half hour. I apologize for that, but I did throw up a bunch of numbers which I wanted to, or which I could have done. I think the big thing in my mind is, that's a financial plan, but what that forecast is really all about is how we finance our future. It's about how we invest in our future. It's about how we ensure our students can achieve, to the best of their ability, how they grow into the future. It was great that Megan ended with that profile of a graduate, but what that 5-year forecast is really all about is how do we ensure that how we receive our money and how we spend our money is making sure that those students, as they graduate, they reflect what that profile of a graduate is all about. Just a little bit more. Questions on that forecast?
Great job. Thank you.
I'm going to miss this.
Well, you,
I'm probably the only one.
the committee meetings are public, you can attend.
Yes, I can. And I can come to these, that's true.
Okay. So I don't want to forget, there's 2 action items. The first one is item 8.01, and that is the recommendation to approve the 5-year forecast and the accompanying notes as presented, and it's enclosed there.
Right. You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaaf, and seconded by Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Schaaf.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
And the second item, the last item, is a recommendation to approve a resolution designating depositories of public monies of the school district for active and interim funds. In September, we approved a resolution to go seek proposals from financial institutions, from banks to be our depository or to be our bank. Glad to say that we had 7 responses to that, which is good. Within that resolution, I did list, there were 6 of them, 6 of those banks that wanted to become active. The active depositories are for like your checking account and for money that we deposit and spend out. 7 of them applied to be for the interim depositories. The interim is for funds that we would make our investments in, if need be, to do that. So the recommendation is to include those banks as our depository. The term is for 5 years. It doesn't mean that we have to go open up and do all of our banking through all 7. During that 5-year period, depending on fees and depending on different structures, we can pick and choose how we do our banking. So do recommend that we approve that resolution for designating depositories of public monies of the school district for both active and interim funds.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy and seconded by Mr. Chumley. Rudy, too.
Okay, thank you.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Nothing further under comments?
No, I do not.
I hope
Then
not.
no.
They're hoping.
That's not a dig.
He's coughed.
All right. Moving on to board business. Culture committee, I don't think we've met. Education committee? Nope. Family and community engagement committee?
Yeah.
Finance and advocacy?
We met Monday. The unapproved minutes are in the agenda, but we talked pretty much about what was discussed in the last few minutes, including where Mr. Romano talked about looking for alternative sources of revenues.
Sounds like.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was going to say something, but yeah, essentially everything that you talked.
What comes back to you, you can get it under board comments. Operations committee?
I think we have a meeting next.
Coming up
Monday.
Yeah,
Monday.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Policy committee?
We met on Monday and went over those 32 items we looked at today, and I think we're holding off until next year.
We're gonna meet in December, but hold until January.
Oh, so second reading won't be in December?
No, we'll have the second reading still.
Oh, we will.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, we just won't start another batch.
I understand.
Gotcha. Citizens advisory?
We met last night. Mr. Gebhardt, I'd like to thank you for bringing us Brandy Calton. She's going to be a really valuable member. We talked about time change and what it would do with money and routes and all kinds of things. So we had our preliminary discussions about that.
There were some aha moments.
Yeah.
For who?
Everybody.
Yeah, there. Some people think we should change time. I'm a big advocate. I've read the research. I've lived it. You know, last year Bethel was 7:10. This year it's 7:45. There's a huge difference in the kids. Some people don't agree with that. That's fine. We talked about an 8:30 time is what's recommended. So that was one possibility, but that might not be feasible. So
And that recommendation is from the research, because part of the meeting was 3 parts. There was research from the Pediatrics Association, kind of national studies. There was a part that was focused on transportation, what our current 3-tier system looks like, what the routes are, the cost of those routes. And I think that's probably one of the most eye-opening things for people, is just to really understand the investment in transportation and what that looks like. And then the third part was getting an overview of middle school, all the components that we have, where our successes are, where some of our challenges are when it comes to serving them. And it was a really good discussion.
We have a really good group of people. I enjoyed hearing other viewpoints. The woman sitting beside me knew me from Amelia. I did not remember.
Everybody knows you, Jim. Right?
Usually you know everybody, so I'm kind of surprised to hear that you.
All right, under board comments, Mr. Chumley, you want to get us started?
Thank everyone for setting this up tonight. This was great. Went smoothly. I hope everyone's playing their Christmas music, putting up their lights. I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving next week.
Yeah.
And I hope you prepare a nice half-hour, hour-long speech next month for it.
Yep.
That includes financials.
Maybe.
Anything further? Mr. Schaff.
I want to thank Megan and Ross. Great presentation. And the Wolf Pup presentation was awesome as well. I love that logo. And when that logo was introduced, I loved that one with the pup. But yeah, I'll end that and save for next time.
Mrs. Delaney.
Thank you to Mrs. Courtney and her team for hosting here tonight. It's always fun to get back into the buildings, and I had no idea that there was another driveway entrance, so I got lost in the parking lot.
Yeah, that gate
in
closed.
the dark.
That gate closed kind of threw me for a
Yeah,
loop.
kind of
but-
I want to thank the Bengals for their ongoing support. Not everybody is probably aware, but West Clermont High School has a phenomenal weight room for our athletes and for developing our athletes, and we could not have what we have today without the partnerships with the Bengals and other organizations and all the hard work that our athletic team, including our coaches as well as our athletic directors. So we have a weight room that's on par with some colleges, if not better than some colleges. So that's great that we can still partner with them.
This is like the third time we've received
Yeah.
equipment
Yeah,
from
Michigan
them, isn't
State
it?
gave us all of theirs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, we're gonna win tomorrow. I just thought it was exciting in the personnel agenda that a couple of the volunteers for our student teachers are actually returning West Clermont students.
Yep.
So that's exciting. And then just everyone have a great Thanksgiving and be grateful for the small things. Doesn't have to be big, just be grateful.
Mr. Rudy.
I really enjoyed the Capitol Conference, did some networking, and met some really good people across the state. It's interesting to find out how much we are like some of them, until I went to a session put on by Upper Arlington with their new building and all of this other stuff. They talked about community engagement, and it's just totally unrealistic for me to think for here. I mean, millions and millions of dollars for this, that, and the other. It's great you have that, but it doesn't do us much good. But I think we're very on par with them. I have to share too, at the end of the convention, I got to meet Patricia Heaton, Deborah Barone from Everybody Loves Raymond, Ohio native and Ohio grad. It was pretty cool. And she gave a really good speech. She really inspired me on differentiation. And thanked teachers throughout her life for putting her in the right direction and for helping her special needs son. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am, because that's my favorite holiday. And thanks to everybody.
I have a few things. Obviously, the presentations tonight were outstanding. Thank you for that. Last week while we were at Capitol Conference, I got to network with some people and found out that there are several districts in Ohio that are including students as appointed people on their school board. And I don't know how everybody on the board feels, but I would like to ask Mrs. Adams to do a little bit of research on how they're making that happen, the concept of what you would contribute to the board, the limitations. Obviously, they would not be voting members. They would not be allowed in executive session, which is personnel driven and things like that. But what role would they play at bridging the gap between students and the board? That's who we're here to serve. And I would like to hear more about what's going on in their lives as a student, what decisions what impact our decisions has on them and their fellow classmates. And does anybody have any objection to us asking Mrs. Adams to take a look at that? I'll do it. Thank you. Great. And then lastly, I hope everybody joins me in reflecting on the holiday of how thankful I am for our staff. Above and all, beyond all, our teachers that are grinding it every single day, the good, the bad, the ugly. Our administrative team, you guys are doing a fantastic job running our district, and obviously our leadership team. You guys are outstanding, and I know I have a lot of to be thankful for the jobs that you guys do. You make our job much easier to do when we are all rowing our boat in the same direction at the same speed. So thank you for that. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday.
Can I add one more thing?
You betcha.
I also would like to, this is sad news, but I would like to ask you to send prayers and good wishes to the Ayers family. A lot of you know Ray, who was a long-time employee of the district and coach. Wonderful man, would give somebody the shirt off his back if they needed it. His son Nick is our head football coach. He is in hospice and not doing well. It made me very sad to hear that. And the Ayers family would really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Our next board meeting is going to be on December 13th, correct? Yep. All right, thank you for
Yeah.
joining us this evening. That's not right.
Oh, we're gonna go into executive session.
Oh, that's right.
I'm looking.
20th.
The 20th.
I was double checking, yeah.
Got it.
December 20th at 7 o'clock.
Christmas week.
And we'll be back at our normal location, right? We do need to go back into executive session. So I'd like to make a motion to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of, or investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, and ask for a second.
Second.
Just Rudy. Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley? Yes. 5 yes.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. We are going to go into executive session. We're going to withdraw immediately thereafter. There'll be no vote or anything taken, no action after that.